Great night, fans. Welcome to Tabletop Tactics with myself, Lawrence. Today, Grandmaster of the all-new Warpbane Task Force Detachment. This is a really interesting detachment. In fact, I would go so far as to say it's maybe even better than a side grade. I'd love to hear what you think. Let's go over the actual rule first, which is the detachment rule, which is now called Hallowed Ground. First up, it gives the entire army reroll ones to hit, regardless of the circumstances. Now that's really, really very good already. On top of that, you have this hallowed ground concept. So what you've got is your deployment zone always counts as hallowed ground. If you hold half of the objectives in no man's land, that becomes hallowed ground. And you guessed it, if you control half or more objectives in your opponent's deployment zone, that becomes hallowed ground. Now with a focus on this detachment, there's a slight focus on purifier units. There's quite a lot of synergy with them. Purifier units always have hallowed ground active for themselves, and they give it off in a 6-inch aura. This is pretty critical as there's a lot of great synergy that you can apply across the armies in your force throughout the game. But what does hallowed ground do? Well, you're already re-rolling ones to hit. What it allows you to do is re-roll all hits. Flat out re-roll hits. Now, that's really, really good, guys, because it applies in combat and it applies in shooting. So straight out of the gate, you could argue that that is a flat upgrade from the Teleport Strike Force and definitely worth consideration alone. Let's go over the enhancements. The first of which is the Mandulian Reliquary, adding 3 to the objective control characteristic of the bearer. Very useful, of course, on a character model which is part of a unit and you're trying to leverage an objective away from an opponent or make it almost impossible for them to out-OC you. Then we have Radiant Champion. This is 15 points. It gives precision to your weapon. Now, in my opinion, this is kind of best on the Brotherhood Champion. The Brotherhood Champion already has precision, but what he will get in addition to this with Radiant Champion is the ability to add 1 mortal wound of damage for every point of damage that he does. So it's really quite nasty. This makes him really effective at character killing. Then we have File of the Abyss. This is 25 points, the most expensive of the enhancements, and it's a Grey Knight's infantry model only. Models in the bearer's unit have the stealth ability. So this is obviously going to be really good on your Paladin squad, or even a Purifier squad if it is a big blob of them and you've got your Brotherhood Champion in there as well. Finally, you have Paragon of Sanctity. This is only 10 points. It's a Grey Knight's model only. Once per battle at the start of the phase, the bearer can select 1 friendly Grey Knight's unit within 18 inches and visible to it, and until the end of that turn, it counts as being in hallowed ground. So that's really good at effectively saying, hey, this unit's going to get re-rolls to hit on everything and it's going to do the business regardless of whether I'm in a hallowed ground bit of territory or not. Next, let's kick off with covering the stratagems, and boy oh boy are there some really good ones in here. Let's go over Sanctified Kill Zone. It's 1 CP along with the rest of the strats in this detachment. They're all only 1 CP. It's really best on a Purifier squad, but you can put it on any Grey Knight squad that is currently in hallowed ground. Yet they get flat reroll 1s to wound, which is really great. So they can be in shooting or in combat, right? Finally, if it's a Purifier squad, and this is where it's just gross, they reroll wounds. So you're already getting reroll hits with the Purifiers. For 1 CP, you can flat reroll wounds on them. That is absolutely brutal because we all know how much firepower they have already, especially when you're adding in things like Castle and Crow as well. And for 1 CP, I suspect you're probably using that almost every turn. We then have Flames of Sanctity for 1 CP. This is used at the end of a fight phase and is again used on a Purifier squad. Roll 1d6 for each enemy unit within 6 inches of your unit, adding 1 to the result if you have Crow in the unit. So on a 4+ or 3+ with Crow, that enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Now, this just basically gives you a 6-inch hammy-ha power-up explosion, which, you know, if you're right in amongst the fray of the enemy, you can literally get multiple enemy units whacking them with mortal wound damage. It's not to be stiffed at, and a nice bonus for 1 CP, especially if you've got a couple of targets which only have a wound or two left, you can just finish them off, which is nice. We then have, for 1 CP, Hallowed Beacon. Hallowed Beacon is done in the reinforcement step of your movement. It targets 1 Grey Knight's infantry unit, excluding Terminators though. This is an important distinction. That is arriving using the Deep Strike or the Teleport Assault abilities. Set up your unit wholly within your army's hallowed ground and more than 6 inches horizontally away from all enemy units. Now, you couldn't apply this to a Purifier squad as they can't count as being in hallowed grounds with their ability until they're on the battlefield. But you could have a Purifier squad giving a 6-inch aura of hallowed ground and then bring a big unit of Strike Marines or perhaps another Purifier squad led by, say, perhaps a Brotherhood champion, perhaps with the enhancements, which gives him that mortal wound damage. And basically what that means is you're getting a 6-inch charge off, potential 6-inch charge off against an enemy unit. This is really, really nasty because given your character sniping ability and given your ability to potentially reroll all hits and reroll all wounds with a CP as well, you can pretty much take out most things in the game, assuming you've got a big 10-man squad of Purifiers geared up for combat, or Strike Marines for that matter. So really, really good, an impressive strat, and kind of helps take the sting out of losing things like Mists of Deimos, for example, or Prognosticated Arrival. We then have Fires of Covenant for 1 CP. This is at the start of your opponent's movement phase. 1 Grey Knights infantry unit from your army is the target, and until the end of the phase, each time an enemy unit is set up or ends a normal advance or fallback move within 6 inches of your unit, roll 1d6, adding 2 to the result if your unit's wholly within your army's hallowed ground, and on a 4+, that enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Now again, this is a nice bonus. It's one of those things which is a deterrent about enemies, especially enemy assault armies, which have to move towards you anyway, because that's how they're going to kill you. This could just potentially plink off a few more mortal wounds, which is a really nasty thing to do, and disincentivize people from coming near you, which is great. Next we have Aegis Eternal for 1 CP. This is quite interesting. I don't love it in some ways, but for this sort of army it does make sense because you're probably focusing more on Purifiers and Strike Marines over Terminators. So it's 1 Grey Knights infantry unit that is within hallowed ground. So you could just do this on Purifiers because they always count as being in hallowed ground once they're on the battlefield. And it basically gives you a 4+ invulnerable save. Perhaps this could work quite well if you've also got a character in a Purifier unit and you've taken that stealth enhancement. So then you're a -1 to hit, then you get a 4+ invulnerable save. It does all add up, but in my experience, I'm not sure how far it will go to keeping them around long enough against lots of sustained fire, because you're still not as tough as a Terminator and you don't have as many wounds. You're still at that 2 wound mark. Don't get me wrong, a 2-up base save and a 4-up invuln is really good. Stack on the -1 to hit as well, but I still think I'd rather that -1 to hit on, say, something like a big Paladin squad or a big block of 10 Terminators instead. Finally, we have Repelling Sphere. That's 1 CP. It's at the start of your opponent's charge phase, and you target 1 Grey Knights infantry unit. So this could be Terminators, it could be Strike Marines or Purifiers. This is really good. You subtract 1 from their charge. It's a bit like the Tau inhibitor drone. I forget exactly what it's called, but where they minus your inches off your charge. However, you subtract 2 to the charge if your unit's in hallowed ground. So again, if it's a Purifier unit, you pop this strat for 1 CP, there'll always be -2 to the charge against them, which is really nasty. And again, there's a few things here in this suite which really prohibit assault armies from really getting that edge on you. Things like mortal wounds in close range with that big mortal wounds bomb. Things like mortal wounds if they arrive within 6 inches of you. And then on top of that, if they try and charge you, even if they are only 6 inches away, if you're a Purifier unit, you can make that charge go from 6 to 8, which is pretty significant, right? Adding that 2 on there. So that rounds out the Warp Bane task force. My opinion on this detachment are that it's probably a side grade +1. Don't get me wrong, flat reroll hits, and you can definitely synergize it that you can reroll hits with most of your units every turn, is brutally powerful. And yes, it's much better than, in my opinion, the +6 inch to your advance, because Grey Knights are already fairly mobile anyway with the pickup, the uppy downy anyway from their army rule. That said, you do miss out on some of those enhancements, and you do miss out on some of those really effective stratagems. Again, like Mists of Deimos is probably one of my favorites, because I tend to find with Grey Knights I'm outscoring my opponent and going for the objectives where I'm not always able to kill. But that's what makes this detachment super interesting, right? Because when I'm effectively re-rolling hits and I have the potential to re-roll 1s to wound or re-roll all wounds on a Purifier unit, which, let's face it, 10 Purifiers and Crow is probably still an auto take in almost every setting, whether it's competitive or not, because Grey Knights just need that punchy unit, right? This makes them even better, even killier, but across your entire army. I can see Dread Knights, I know 6 Dread Knight lists are very popular at the moment as well, being extra effective with this, because who wouldn't want to reroll all of those hits and then have the potential of rerolling ones to wound on select units as well. I can see this getting some serious legs. What it really needs now is some playtesting by me. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to be running this probably in a league game shortly over on Demand, and I will be putting this detachment through its paces. I won't lean into pure Purifier spam, because I do like my Terminator units with the 3 librarians as well, but I'd love to see how that sort of army fits into this detachment, and if it actually ends up making it much killier and therefore much more competitively viable overall. Let's find out soon, hey? So if you want to go check that out, sign up to On Demand and be sure not to miss that game. It will come out soon enough in the future. Till then, I've been Lawrence, you've been Bosses, and I'll see you in another video very, very soon.
Enjoying today's video? Here's a quick look at what we've released this week for our on-demand members. These videos join a huge library of exclusive content that grows every week for our on-demand community. If you want instant access to all of these videos and more, head over to table.tactics.tv or download our app and sign up today. And currently, we have an introductory offer for new customers, so there's never been a better time to join On Demand.